Camera 1 and Camera 2 are rolling, and now speed on both cameras. Call for audio, please.
Sound and speed.
Okay, good. And check position on marking. Coming down, no lower. Okay, and mark.
After Eden docuseries, Laurie, take 1.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. And on your call, sir, I think we're clear now.
Laurie, if you can tell me your name, last name, and the organizations that you're with.
My name is Laurie McGehee, and I'm the Probation Department Manager for the Juvenile Court for Caddo Parish in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I'm also the Director of the Free Coalition to End Human Trafficking in Louisiana.
Laurie, show me, let's start with the coalition. You know, what is the work of the coalition? What do you do there?
The coalition was actually formed in 2012, and it is a coalition to bring everyone together that does work in any kind of human trafficking, sex trafficking, or labor trafficking. It's an umbrella organization to bring everyone in our area to the table and make sure that we all know what each other is doing and how we can all better serve each other and better serve our victims and our survivors.
Are you seeing a good takeaway? Are these organizations starting to play nice together? Because typically it's very siloed, right? I mean, are they starting to feed resources?
Yes. Typically, you see the organizations doing their own thing. They're doing what they do. And bringing everyone together, bringing everyone to the same table has been amazing as far as seeing increased and better services to the juveniles and the adults in the sex industry, but also better communication and working together and not being just our own individual organizations, but actually coming together and creating service plans for the people that we serve.
The coalition, does it include law enforcement as well, or is it more on the NGO side? Do you guys communicate with law enforcement?
We do. We include law enforcement. We have FBI, state police, the city marshals, the local police departments from Shreveport and Bossier, and also the Caddo Parish and Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office. So we do coordinate and communicate very well with law enforcement. That's been probably one of the greatest things about our coalition is that we learn so much from each other. We have a lot of information that we can share with law enforcement, and the same, they share a lot of information with us as well. So yes, they're a very important part.
This is Caddo Parish. How far is the reach of this coalition? And in the second part of the question, are there other coalitions in the state? Because it's a big state.
There are. Our coalition started out in Shreveport, Louisiana, and was initially just involved with the northwest part of the state. And in the last couple of years, we've extended across the state. We have become very well known across the state. Our governor's office is using some of our methods and replicating them around the state. There is also the Trafficking Coalition in New Orleans that we work very closely with. But we've seen a lot of our programs replicated all over the state of Louisiana, which is very exciting.
Are you seeing any support from the state government financially at the moment for the coalition, for your coalition, but also for the supporting organizations that forms the coalition?
We have, the last 2 years have been incredible with Governor John Bel Edwards in Louisiana and his wife Donna Edwards. They are both very committed to ending human trafficking in our state. 2 years ago, they formed the Coalition for Human Trafficking in our state, and it was a commission which consisted of a lot of elected officials, judges, and then also an advisory council, which consisted of a lot of the folks that actually do the work. And a lot of meetings took place. We went to Baton Rouge once a month for about a year and a half. And in January, we actually presented the report to Governor Edwards and Mrs. Edwards, making a lot of recommendations about what we felt needed to be done in Louisiana, some gaps that we were seeing in services. And the state of Louisiana actually received a grant from the Office of Victims of Crime to be given out to all the 9 regions across the state of Louisiana, which will provide for direct services. It will actually go to the child advocacy centers in each region. And the child advocacy centers will provide direct services to victims of human trafficking in those areas.
We can focus on minors for a second in the state of Louisiana. The
Yes.
cases that you're becoming aware of, are they local? Do you find children from other states in the United States coming into Louisiana, trafficking through? What is that climate like?
We do. We actually see both. Unfortunately, the majority of the young people being trafficked in Shreveport and Caddo, Bossier parishes and surrounding areas are children that actually live in our community. We see a lot of familial trafficking where a child is actually being trafficked by their own family member. Could be an older brother, an older sister, a parent, an uncle, or a close family friend. The majority of them have been children that live in our area. We have had some children trafficked into our area from Texas, Mississippi. We've had 2 young men trafficked in our area from as far away as Atlanta, Georgia. We are seeing an increase also in labor trafficking as we see a rising Hispanic population in our area. So now we're seeing children from outside of the United States being trafficked in Shreveport.
The familial trafficking, I'd love to dive into that. It's not something that we've really touched on enough in this docuseries yet, so I'd love if you could just spend a little more time there. Just what you see in that environment. What is going on in a family that a family member will traffic their own child or a dependent? Sometimes it's an uncle or a grandma or a
Yes.
What are you seeing there?
Usually, what we're seeing when a child is trafficked by their own family member is very severe poverty. And a lot of times a family member will traffic their own child so that they don't get evicted from their home. They can pay their rent, they can buy food, and they can pay their other expenses. Sometimes it's a history of abuse in the entire family. The mother was sexually abused, the grandmother was sexually abused, and now the child is being sexually abused. We've seen children as young as 4 years old that have been sexually molested, sexually abused. And it's hard to say this, but it's almost a natural progression into trafficking. Once they've been sexually abused in that manner, it fits. They kind of slide right into that trafficking outside of their family, and they're being trafficked by their own family. I had a young lady tell me that she was trafficked beginning at the age of 6, and I met her when she was 13 years old. And she told me that after being sexually abused and then being trafficked, she just thought that's what her body was for. And it brought me to tears to hear her say that she actually thought that's what she was meant to do in this world.
In your opinion, the fight against trafficking when it's a stranger trafficking and the fight against trafficking when the kids are trafficking while living at home.
Yes.
To talk to me a little bit about that's 2 different worlds, that's 2 completely different scenarios, because that child may be going to school during the day.
Yes. Yes.
And then be sold for sex by a family member in the afternoon or evening.
Yes. When we have children coming through the juvenile justice system, we have not seen a child that has been actually arrested for prostitution. They're not coming into our system in that manner. They're coming into our system because of truancy, because they're ungovernable or runaway, or they've committed a domestic abuse battery against a family member. And what we're seeing is that once we really dive in and we're looking at that family and really doing a lot of investigating into that child's background, we're seeing that that child may be running away from home because they are being trafficked by a family member. They are afraid that if they go home, it's going to continue. They're missing school because they're being trafficked at night and they're too tired to go to school the next day. We're seeing patterns of truancy where a child is going to school, but they're missing the last week of school so that they will earn enough money to pay the rent so that the family does not get evicted. So when they're being trafficked by a family member, it's a lot more personal than being trafficked by someone who they know that lives in the neighborhood or that lives down the street or in another part of the city. it's very heartbreaking to see a child being trafficked by a parent or an older sibling, and usually it's a pattern in that family. It's something that is generational, and it's been happening for years. We had a young lady that was being trafficked by a person that lived in an apartment complex not too far from her home. And it was a situation where she was actually being threatened. Her family was being threatened, and she was deathly afraid that something was going to happen to her or her family. So every time this trafficker, this person would come and tell her to go with him, she went. Whether she wanted to or not, she would go with him because she was deathly afraid that something was going to happen.
On the juvenile side of things, all right, on the juvenile service, juvenile detention, do you see police after rescue bringing those kids to you, or do they have another place to take them?
It's interesting that you should ask that, because it has really evolved over the last 5 years. Since we developed a multidisciplinary team at the juvenile court where I work, we've actually also been engaged in a lot of training of law enforcement, school teachers. We recently started doing some training in the medical school at LSU in Shreveport. And as we're doing these trainings and we're training SROs in the schools and we're seeing the law enforcement on a more regular basis, we're really seeing the attitude of law enforcement change toward these victims. I think 5 years ago, they were thinking that these were just girls that were bad. They were promiscuous, and they were luring the men into these situations, and they would arrest them and bring them to our detention center. And it may be on a disturbing the peace charge or a shoplifting or a burglary, something of that nature. But if they learned that that child had been trafficked, they didn't show a lot of sympathy at that time. Now that they've learned a lot more about these girls and what they're facing, what they're going through, what their challenges are, they are actually trying not to bring them to our detention center. They do at times because of safety reasons. Sometimes that's the safest place for a child to be. Unfortunately, it's not the most ideal situation for a victim of human trafficking, but sometimes it's the safest place for her to be. But we're seeing law enforcement taking them over to a youth shelter that we have in Bossier City more often than not now when they learn that they've been a victim of human trafficking. And we're seeing the law enforcement be more sympathetic, not just toward the juveniles, but to adults as well. So it's a remarkable change in our community.
Do you obviously see cases for abuse and trafficking in the juvenile court system. You guys have a special court.
Yes.
Understanding. Can you tell us a little bit about this court? And is it unique in the U.S.? I think it is. I mean, I don't know of another state that has a designated trafficking court. Is that what it is?
Yes, it is a designated trafficking court. It's similar to a drug court program where we have children that are involved in substance abuse and they actually need treatment for that substance abuse, and they see the judge once a week. Our trafficking court operates in much the same way, and actually it's not completely unique to the United States. We went to Los Angeles back in February of this year to see their Star Court. And we were able to meet with the judge who runs that Star Court. She's amazing. And we were able to meet with the probation officers that work in that section, observe their staffing techniques, and actually visit a service provider in Los Angeles. And we modeled our Star Court after that court in Los Angeles. And STAR stands for, excuse me a minute, I'm sorry. My mind just went blank. Okay.
STAR stands for?
The STAR Court stands for Succeeding Through Achievement and Resiliency. So the word trafficking is nowhere to be found in that court. And the girls aren't even told that they're in that court because they've been trafficked. Our judge has been very compassionate with these girls. We just started in March, so it's a brand new program. And the judge is talking to the girls and telling them that they are having very high-risk behavior, that we are concerned about them, that we want to get them back on the right path, and that's why they're in this specialty court. They see the judge once a month and have a review hearing. We have 2 specialized probation officers that are highly trained in working with victims of human trafficking, and our supervisor of that unit is called our Specialized Intensive Unit. And these 2 women, please keep them in your prayers because they work with victims of human trafficking and high-risk girls and boys every single day. That's their job, and they are wonderful at it. They do a great job.
According to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, according to them, we're looking at a rise in minor sex trafficking in the United States over the last 5 years of 846%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's epidemic proportions.
It
If
is.
we've got an outbreak of flu virus at that rate, they'd shut schools down.
Yes.
They would shut anything down for anything. Do you have an idea of what has led to this massive increase?
I really believe social media and the internet plays a huge part in the increase that we see in juvenile sex trafficking and with adults as well. Prior to the internet, prior to social media, a person had to physically go to a place where they would be able to purchase this service, so to speak. And now it's so easy on social media. We see girls posting ads on Facebook, on Snapchat, on Instagram, on internet sites, dating websites that you would think would be safe. One of the young ladies that was trafficked to our area from a city in South Texas actually was on a website called Plenty of Fish, which my understanding is a Christian dating website, and a trafficker found her. And she thought she was talking to a 15-year-old boy when she was in reality speaking with a pimp and a bottom bee. And the bottom bee is the woman that is helping the pimp, helping recruit and helping manage the girls. And she was given a bus ticket and was brought to Shreveport and forced into trafficking. About 10 days went by before the FBI was able to locate her. The pimp put her picture and her ad on Backpage, and that's how the FBI was able to locate her in a well-known area of Shreveport, right by our airport that is just renowned for human trafficking, and they were able to rescue her. By that time, she had been pretty badly abused. But social media and the interstates also, I think, play a huge part in the increase in trafficking.
Hold on 1 second.
It's those long ones coming out again.
Okay.
We got you down.
Thank you.
It's better.
Now that what you just described is the movie Ain't Thing. That's exactly right. What are some of the biggest challenges that your organization, both the coalition and then on the juvenile side, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing?
As we're working with these young ladies and also some young men, we've worked with boys and transgender females through the coalition and also through our juvenile court system. And as we're working with these young people, what we're really seeing the need is emergency housing. We have our detention center, which is not the ideal place. We have a shelter in Bossier City, which is a better placement, a wonderful placement. It's not secure. If the children want to leave that facility, they can, and oftentimes they do. They will run away and leave that facility. So emergency housing that's a little bit more secure but less than a detention center, and also long-term housing. We do have a couple of group homes in South Louisiana, one in Covington called Free Indeed, and one in Baton Rouge called Metanoia House, which are both wonderful facilities that we do utilize, but we will drive 4 to 6 hours to bring girls to these facilities. We really need more long-term housing, more direct services to these girls, more trauma treatment in our area and all through the state. Trauma treatment works wonders with this population. Specifically, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy is a very effective treatment for this population.
What do you see that type of a rehabilitation process timeline looks like? How long until functionality is returned? And can, in your opinion, these girls ever really recover?
Absolutely. Recovery is absolutely possible. It's a long road, and it's difficult to put a timeline on that. We know that before a person can actually go through trauma treatment, they have to have gone through some other types of rehabilitative therapy. They have to be in a better place to start the trauma treatment, because as you go through trauma treatment, you relive your trauma. And if you're not in a good place, if you're not ready to do that, it can be devastating for an adult or a juvenile. So we go through some other trauma like cognitive behavioral trauma. We go through mental health rehabilitation treatment before we actually can get to the trauma therapy. We've seen young ladies recover in as little as 3 or 4 months, and then we've had some young ladies where it's taken over a year to actually get them to a good place where they're not going to go back to their trafficker. They're going to go to school and act like a 15-year-old, act like a teenager, have a regular life that doesn't involve sex trafficking. It can really take some time to get a girl to a place where she is deprogrammed, because there's a lot of psychological coercion that goes on with the pimps and the traffickers with these girls and boys, and they believe that this is the life they're meant to lead, and sometimes feel like this is the person they're in love with. This is their boyfriend. This is their person that loves them. And this may be the only person that has truly ever loved them in their life. A young lady that we worked with through the Free Coalition that actually now does training for us was in love with her pimp. That was her boyfriend, and they actually had a child together. And it has been a very, very long road to recovery for her. But she is doing very well now, and she's in college and doing great, raising her child.
Are you seeing a connection and also just your view of the foster care system in the United States? And is trafficking prevalent in the foster care system?
Unfortunately, we have seen some trafficking in the foster care system. At juvenile court, we do work with child in need of care cases as well. One of our judges specifically handles those cases, and many of our trafficking cases are coming through the child in need of care court. We have not seen, fortunately, in our area, a lot of trafficking in the foster care system, but we have seen it outside of our parish in some other states, where a child is placed into foster care and then actually trafficked by the foster parent. And that is really unfortunate, because that should be a safe place for that child to be.
Where can we find your organization? If you can give us some of the website info, and then I'd like for you to end with your name, last name, and the name of the organization again, please.
Okay. The Free Coalition of Northwest Louisiana is actually in association with the YWCA of Northwest Louisiana. So if you go to the YWCA of Northwest Louisiana website, you will see the Free Coalition, and you will also see our human trafficking conference that is coming up in June. This is our 5th year to do this conference. It's called the South Central U.S. Human Trafficking Conference, and it is amazing. Every year we have some wonderful people that will travel at their own expense and come and speak and train at this conference. This year we're really looking forward to the conference because we do have, for the first time ever, a male survivor that's going to come and speak at our conference. Our First Lady, Donna Edwards, is going to be speaking at our conference this year. So we're very excited about that. So that is another website that you can also look to see all the things that we're doing in the Free Coalition. And our juvenile court website is Juvenile Court for Caddo Parish in Louisiana. And there's a lot of information on our website there. We are actually also on the human trafficking, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. We are listed, the juvenile court is listed on that hotline, and also the Free Coalition is listed on that hotline.
Just your name, last name, and then the Free Coalition at the end, or whatever organization you want to mention.
Okay. My name is Laurie McGehee, and I'm with the Juvenile Court for Caddo Parish in Shreveport, Louisiana, and also the Free Coalition to End Human Trafficking in Louisiana.
Okay.
Wow.